Hello, everyone, and welcome to KITE Research Rounds. Our speaker today is none other than our very own Dr. Milos Popovic. I'm sure most, if not all of you know Milos, but I'm still going to read the bio paragraph in case there are people in the audience who don't. Dr. Milos Popovic is the director of KITE Research Institute at the Toronto Rehab Institute University Health Network. He's also a tenured professor in the Institute of Biomedical Engineering at the University of Toronto. Dr. Popovic is a fellow of the Canadian Academy of Engineering and a fellow of the American Institute of Medical and Biological Engineering. He's the co-founder and director of MindTech, which is a company, and also the Center for Advancing Neurotechnological Innovation to Application, CRANIA, at the University Health Network and the University of Toronto, and also the Cranial Neuromodulation Institute at the University of Toronto, and also the Canadian Spinal Cord Injury Rehabilitation Association. Dr. Popovic is also the founder of FabrIc-Based Research, FIBRE platform, and the Rehabilitation Engineering Laboratory, both located at the KITE Research Institute. Dr. Popovic held the Toronto Rehab Chair in Spinal Cord Injury Research appointment from 2007 until 2017. On a personal note, Dr. Popovic is and has been one of my mentors. So it's really with great pleasure that I introduce our speaker. And please join me in a virtual round of applause to welcome Milos.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you for a very kind and generous introduction. So today I'll talk about FabrIc-Based research platform. And the reason why Babak selected me to present today was because he needed somebody scary and appropriate for the Halloween event today. So here I am. So very important thing, not that important, but it's important for me to do it, is talk about conflict of interest. As Babak said, I have been a co-founder, director, and shareholder of MindTech. I'm launching a company which is called ERNE, and I'm consultant with Flurry Intelligence, so that you know that. Nothing from this presentation today is going to relate to those conflicts of interest. So FIBRE, what are we trying to really accomplish? We're trying to create a world-class academic and hospital-led research platform in health textiles. And we're trying to merge science, the way how we do science, physiology, engineering, and other things that we normally do at KITE, combined with fashion, and try to integrate them in a seamless technology. So what are smart textiles? Smart textiles are fundamentally garments that we wouldn't normally wear in everyday life, which can be functionalized. When you say functionalized, means that you can, for example, measure the motion, you can measure where the joint angles are, and not where, what are the joint angles, and you can also measure the posture and position of the body in space. You can measure cardiac function, you can measure the respiratory function, body temperature, muscle activity, such things. The fundamentals to this type of technology is you need to have the sensors or actuators if you are providing some form of treatment or intervention on the body. But you need the sensors, and then you need energy harvesting or storage systems, and you also need the communication system, so all the data that is collected with the device can be communicated outside of the device, or you can get the instructions or commands from outside of the device into the garment so the garment can execute a particular function. Here are some of the examples of some of the technologies that are available or being built or developed right now. So this is, for example, socks from Sensoria company in the US. And the sock is actually designed to measure some of the fundamentals of the gait and can be used, or has been used to, for example, in Parkinson's disease patients, to see when they have a freezing of gait and to help adjust the medication or neuroimplant stimulation intensities in order to minimize freezing of gate. Second is, this is an ECG type of measurement system. Again, this is from Sensoria. There are other companies which do the same thing or similar thing, like Myant and others. You can also have electronics, which is flexible, or you can have electronics, which is kind of solid and hard, but in very small encapsulated units, so they can take the bending and pressure and potential strain and stress. And also you can have light, and usually light is used as a form of a therapy that you can deliver, or you can just put it in a garment so it looks funky and exciting. So the game plan for the FIBRE Institute, which we are creating here at KITE, is to combine three fundamentals. Basic science, that's what we normally do at KITE. Engineering, some of that is done in KITE, some of them is not. For example, material science is done at University of Toronto, our partner laboratory with Dr. Hani Naguib. And third one, and other partners at Metropolitan University and whatnot. And the third one is to combine the fashion, which is done at OCAD, the Metropolitan University, and other partners that I'll show you in a minute. These are all the partners that we have. So we have 4 colleges. We have George Brown, Sheridan, Humber, and Centennial. They have been outstanding partners with us, and they've been helping us develop various research programs and technologies. And then from the universities, we have Toronto Metropolitan, University of Toronto, naturally, and OCAD University. And we are the 8th partner and the leading partner on this. And this is geographically where different partners are located in GTA. These are all the scientists which are involved with FIBRE. I'm not going to go through all of them, just to show you that many of them are from KITE, but many of them are from other branches of UHM and UFT and various colleges that I mentioned in universities. Okay. And this number is increasing, and this is not all inclusive pictures, because these are the pictures I could get from the internet, and so a number of them are as well missing. The purpose of this is just to give you a sense that this is real and whatnot. So let's talk about FIBRE. FIBRE has 6 different main trusts, or we call them cores. Core number 1 is related to materials synthesis and characterization efforts. Core number 2 is implantable technologies, textile-based implantable, fiber-based implantable technologies. Core 3 is creating the yarn and textiles from the materials that you're synthesizing, core 1. And of course, trying to use those materials to extract signals or provide actuation function, if that's what we are pursuing. In a core 4, this textile solutions and sensors are all integrated in textiles, and they're tested in targeted patient populations, and we explore what the product can do at the end of the day when everything is put together. In the core 5, we run clinical trials. We test if the device is doing the physiological assessments and measurements correctly. And in the last one is a closed loop capabilities. This can be strictly closed loop capabilities, or it can be that you take the data, throw it to the cloud, analyze the data, understand what's happening with the patient, make a decision, send this information back to the patient or the caregiver, and in that sense, in loose sense, a closed loop system. So we'll start with the core number 1, material synthesis and characterization. In this, so that's a core number 1. In this space, fundamentally, what we're trying to do is we try to create polymeric fibers. They don't always have to be artificially produced fibers. Sometimes people use also wool and cotton. But fundamentally, you would create the material from which you want to get a fiber, and you get a fiber through extrusion, injection molding, compression, or spinning, and then the fiber is created. And then you can functionalize the fiber by adding nanotechnologies, surface treatment, vapor deposition, and that fiber becomes functional. Strictly speaking, the order doesn't have to be like that, because you can take nanoparticles and put them during the creating a polymer, and then through spinning create a the fiber that is of interest to us. So you can just skip the step or reshuffle them around. But the end goal is trying to get a fiber which is functionalized. Once the fiber is functionalized, in this core we examine the surface properties, tensile strength, and other mechanical properties that are relevant for the material. And of course, if the material is used as a conductor or something else, you have to explore its electrical properties. And then that yarn is then examined how you can turn it into a textile. Is it going to be through knitting, or is it going to be through weaving? These are decisions that are made after that. The main partners on this are Centennial College, Sheridan, University of Toronto, and Toronto Metropolitan University. That's where most of this activity takes place. Examples for the core one. So this is, for example, an FES textile, which we built with Mayans about 4 or 5 years ago. That was the first version of it. And now we are building new generation of electrodes that will go into textiles and materials that can, for example, produce electrical stimulation. This is done in Hani Naguib's laboratory. Core number 2 is biocompatible implant design. This is that core. And the fundamentals of this is we're trying to get a textile or yarn that can be used as an implant. And we are right now targeting 3 potential scenarios. Scenario, or not an implant, can be used in medical applications. So one scenario is using yarns and fibers as potentially electrodes for deep brain stimulation. The second is using textiles to replace either stimulation electrodes in pacemakers or even the entire pacemaker. And the third one is application for regeneration of skin after pressure ulcers. In this particular application, you need to look how this technology works with cells. And if it's working well on that level, then you look at the animal model, and then from animal model, you jump to human. And of course, you have to analyze how the technology behaves in all these different scenarios. The main partners are actually KITE and University of Toronto on that one, and UHN at large, because we work with Toronto General Hospital on this quite substantially. Here's some examples. We have been for a couple of years looking into using electrical stimulation to navigate stem cells. And you can see an image where the stem cells are moving under the influence of electrical field, going towards anode. Now they're going backwards towards anode, actually cathode, I apologize. And so that's one of the technologies we discovered 10 plus years ago. And now we're devising a method to deliver this electrical stimulation to brain. So this is one of the generations of the electrodes, which were done by Hani Naguib and Cindy Morishet in partnership with KITE. And you can see how these fibers look like, and these fibers are implanted directly into the brain. Right now, it's the brain of a mouse, but that eventually may evolve into the system, which will be delivered to human subjects. Core 3, sensor and actuator fabrication. This is the core number 3. This is a little bit more complex. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get a textiles or textile-based sensors, which with the proper data acquisition amplification systems and filtering systems can be used, for example, to listen to the sounds. And they can be equivalent in a function to stethoscopes. And if you integrate that textile-based solution into a t-shirt, you can have a t-shirt which can act as a stethoscope. Similarly, you can have a system to measure temperature, or you can have a system which can absorb the sweat. Textile will look at the properties of the sweat and use that as a way to measure the glucose in the blood. And now this data will be then transmitted to the cloud and processed in the cloud to allow clinicians to make a decision. We also have situations when you can use electrodes, and we actually build those electrodes and use them for ECG, EEG applications, EMG applications as well. And you can also take the textiles, and bending of the textiles can be used as a way to measure kinematics of the wrist, elbow, shoulder, and whatnot. And also the different other technologies which are relevant. One opportunity technologies that as people are sweating, that can be used to generate power. We also need a way to transmit data in and out of the system. So creating antennas which are knitted into the garment is relevant technology. And of course, systems like for cooling the body or for heating the body or for generating the force. You have textiles which under certain circumstances and conditions with high voltage fields, they start contracting. And then you can also produce electrical stimulation and deliver electrical stimulation through the textile-based technology. All the partners at FIBRE are involved with this project because they're fairly complex. They have all kind of multidimensional issues that need to be dealt with. And so each of those technologies that I have shown you a minute ago, all these partners are involved with them. Examples, I'm just going to show you the Azadeh's example. Azadeh's been looking to listening to sounds of the body. So this is her prototype that she has done, which is purely mechanical in nature. The next generation that's coming out is going to be textile-based. Core number 4, design, exploration, and product development. So this is the core number 4. And fundamentals here is now that you have a functionalized fiber, you can either weave it or you can knit it or through embroidery, put it into a textile. And of course, stitching and sewing are other parts of ways of delivering the technology into the textile or adjusting the garment to fit the body of the person. This is then married with the technology that you need, data acquisition systems, wireless communication, and that helps you generate or create a smart garment. Now, when you have a garment, that's a very difficult process to get to that point. Then you have another extremely complicated process in which you want to find out how that garment behaves in everyday life. So you have to check how the garment behaves when you're putting it on, taking it off, when you're storing it, when you're buying it, how it has to be presented, packaged, stored. Later, when the garments, become useless or damaged, you need to recycle them. Also, you want to find out how your garment behaves when you're active, during exercise, when you're working, in your leisure time, when you're sleeping. Also, when you're doing things like, eating, toileting, taking shower, and then what happens to the system when you're washing it? Does it degrade and what? So all these different scenarios and others, which I didn't present here, need to be taken care of and put into consideration when you're designing this garment. And all of these elements have to be addressed properly, and the system has to be designed so the system is functional in those different circumstances. And then once you have this working on able-bodied subjects, then you start using it with subjects for which this type of technology is being actually targeted. And of course, lessons learned from that go back into changing a fiber or fiber design and how do you create the garment and technology that goes into the garment. All members of the team are involved in this aspect of the technology development design. We were very blessed to have George Brown and OCAD with different laboratories there that are looking into design and making design inclusive, and the fashion and the design, all this is working together. Because if you have a beautiful design, but it looks like it was designed in 1800s, most of the people will not wear it, right? And so there are some of the examples, there's more of them, but for example, Metropolitan has designed skirts and dresses for women who had surgeries due to breast cancer. And on the left side, in George Brown, you have jacket that was designed for stroke patients, taking into consideration all the things that, all the functional deficits they may have, how they can put the jacket on and do it independently, which in stroke patients can be quite a challenge. Okay, core 5, it's validation, integration, and safety. That's core 5. In this core, fundamentally, what you do is you're taking all these different technologies. You have to check them, all these different garment solutions. You have to check them against the gold standard for measuring, for example, ECG or EEG or EMG function and such. And then you have to go and test them, how the system behaves during various normal functions. So when you give it to the subject or patient they're using in everyday life, you want to see how the system behaves in this type of environment. And also when you start running clinical trials, the patient may have the garment on them, and you may use video surveillance, robotics, telemedicine, and other ways of observing how the system behaves as you're running clinical trials with it. And we need to do clinical trials with this type of technology. All partners engage in that. And here's one very successful example that came from Paul Yu at University of Toronto, and he's also appointed at KITE. This is his system for incontinence management. So by stimulating saphenous nerve, you can reduce the incontinence quite substantially. That's a product right now, and it's commercialized, and they're running through clinical trials right now with the system. Core number 6 is data acquisition analytics. That's the last core. For example, you have a patient which has 5 different issues like cardiopulmonary issue, muscle atrophy, range of motion issue, balance, and pain. And then you will take all these technologies, merge them into a single T-shirt or garment, and then that garment goes on a patient. You collect the data in real time. This data goes to the cloud. It's processed in the cloud, and it's presented to various stakeholders in management and caring for the patient. Naturally, some of the processing can be done automatically, and that's the intent. And things that show some, anomalies and some unusual behaviors, cardiologists may have to look at it, or general practitioner, or whatchamacallit, neurologist may go and have to check it out. And then all the advices that the patient under certain circumstances will require from the educator, kinesiologist, or cardiologist, or dietitian, or whatnot, that will go in a cloud and is then distributed to all stakeholders, of course, patient herself, also the people who are, for example, general practitioner who is caring for the patient, and also maybe the family members, if the family members are involved in caring for the individual. And of course, the lessons learned from that are put back to redesign and improve all the aspects of the technology. All partners involved, and examples. I actually don't have a good example, but because we haven't got to that point yet. Case scenarios. Why would we do this in the first place? And why do we think that this is a good approach? The good thing with textiles and wearables in textiles is because we all wear textiles, and we wear them all the time. Nobody's walking naked on the streets or in the corridors of KITE. So since you're already wearing it, then the compliance is almost 100%. So if you can weave the technology in the garment, the compliance will be extremely high. And so here's some scenarios where we think that this technology will play an important role. For example, if you have a person who has a Parkinson's disease. Right now, how this is working is person starts experiencing tremor, for example. They'll go to their general practitioner. General practitioner will send them to neurologist. Neurologist will figure out that they have Parkinson's disease, give them proper medication, send them home. And then over some period of time, this medication becomes less and less effective. And in some patients, they have to make a decision that they have to receive neuroimplant. And then person will have a neurosurgery, or will have ablation. It's also surgical intervention. And then after that, they will go to physiotherapy, and then they'll go home, or some other forms of therapy. That's scenario how this is working right now. What we think where the garments will really make a huge difference and the fiber can make a huge difference is that the patient who we may suspect that they'll be developing Parkinson's disease, they can start wearing the technology, or they can just wearing the system, and the system can detect that they're having freezing of gait, or they're having problems, they're having tremors, or they have bradykinesia as the first signs of Parkinson's disease. That information goes to general practitioner neurologist. The person is invited, the proper medication is given, and as the person is living with this technology on them 24/7, we get a better information and idea, is this medication working, in which times of the day the patient may need to increase the dose or maybe decrease the dose and things like that. And will help us really tune this much tighter and give much longer runway for the medications instead of resorting to neurosurgery and resort to neurosurgery as a last resort. And if we do resort to neurosurgery, then the implants that will go in the brain will not be 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters wide as they're right now, but they will be fraction of a millimeter. They'll be textile-based, and they'll go right into subthalamic nucleus or GPI in order to stimulate the brain. The person will then go to the physiotherapy, but the physiotherapy, they will be wearing one of the textile solutions, which will watch if they're having tremor, if they're having bradykinesia. The textile may be even able to communicate with the neuroimplant to help neuroimplant make the decisions to automatically adjust some of the stimulation parameters. And also all this can be connected to the virtual care, tele-rehab, and whatnot. This next scenario, it's cardiology. Today, the person is experiencing some problems with cardiovascular system. They go to GP, and the GP will send them to cardiologist, and with medication and exercise that could be managed. In some cases, the patient has a cardiac event, needs a surgery, and then they go through polo and go through cardiac rehab, and they go home. What we are trying to change is fundamentally add the fiber flavor to that, so that patients can actually wear the fiber garments even before there's any signs that they have a cardiac event. And based on their behaviors and based on their having or not having sleep apnea, we can advise them what to do, what not to do, so they never have a cardiac event. In the unlikely situation, they have a cardiac event, and if they have a cardiac surgery, they will receive an implant, which will be textile-based implant, and put on the heart and work as a pacemaker, but will be different in nature, with fiber-based. And then they'll go through cardiac rehab. And the cardiac rehab, they'll again wear fiber-based technology on them to watch how they're improving how they're adhering to exercise routine. Are they improving? How they're improving? And we can manage them also at home through tele-rehab or some other ways of overseeing and managing patients. And so we believe that this could dramatically reduce number of patients who have a cardiac event, and if they have a cardiac event, enable us to provide better, tighter, more specific and targeted care than we can do today. Let's talk about the fiber ecosystem. We have been working very hard to create this ecosystem for the last couple of years. Anthony Palma has been critical in bringing many of the partners, so he gets almost most of the credit, and Azad as well. So from the hospital point of view, Toronto Rehab, Toronto General, and Toronto Western, and are partners of this. Princess Margaret as well. Ted Rogers Center, Healthcare Human Factors are also partners, and Health Innovation Hub, which is UFT, but originally started from UHN and whatnot. The academic institutions, we already talked about them, so I'm not going to spend time on that. And then we have a much broader ecosystem in Toronto where there's a craft NRC Center for Microfluidics and Micromanufacturing that we are partners with. And also there's a manufacturing supercluster that we hope to leverage with our various projects. There's various companies which are involved with us on many of the projects. And the most important partner that we have right now is the Sona Group. It's a partner from India. Sona Group and V Technologies, they invested about $3 million in cash, which was leveraged by Matex. So there's a $6 million in cash for various projects. We had 3 rounds of competitions and about 15 projects had been approved for funding. And this would not happen if it was not for Choco. Choco is actually the CEO of Sona College and V Technologies, which are various branches of the same enterprise. And he has been the one who recognized the opportunity, worked with us and FIBRE to get FIBRE launched in July 2001. In Toronto, besides all those different institutions that I showed you a few minutes ago, we also have partners at Mount Sinai, Center for Aging, Brain Health Innovation, St. Michael's, and SickKids. And at the Canada level, we are partners with McGill, New Brunswick, University of British Columbia, University of Alberta, University of Saskatchewan, and University of Manitoba. This push towards to broader Canadian footprint, really the credit goes considerably to Azadeh and of course Toronto. Achievements, what did we do so far? So we launched, we put an effort into FIBRE started with 2020. In March 2021, we got the project and partnership with the Sona Group and V Technologies. In March 2021, we got the matching funds for MyTax. In December 2021, we got funding from University of Toronto, from the Faculty of Applied Sciences and Engineering, about $0.5 million it's through the strategic funding in order to get FIBRE going forward and get people at UFT more engaged with FIBRE initiative. Then in April 2022, Centennial College and George Brown College got $2.5 million of NSERC ARTP funding, which was FIBRE directed. In May this year, KITE and Sheridan submitted a $6 million ORF application, right? And this is led by it's Sykes. And in July, we submitted, this year, we submitted a CFI infrastructure grant, which is about $23 million. And just a couple of weeks ago, we submitted NFRF for $24 million, which is KITE and Pan-Canadian partners trying to get funding for infrastructure and funding, operating funding for the enterprise. So up to now, we're about $9 million in cash and $0.5 million in KITE. These are some of the things which people who were trying to partner with us or been working with us said about FIBRE, and I'll just quote City of Toronto. FIBRE would open conversations around Toronto as a living laboratory for new care-enabled textiles. And I want to show you the video that we have created for FIBRE as an introduction. So it'll take about a minute and a half. So enjoy. All the information about FIBRE and FIBRE platform can be found at the following webpage and Twitter feed that we have. And that's it. What is important for you to know, this is one of the large efforts which we are pushing at KITE, in addition to tele-rehab and crania efforts, and that we're trying to actually get investment and funding to help move these technologies. We believe that that's be very instrumental in caring for people in the future, and you've seen it, what COVID has done. And if we had some of these technologies in place, it would have been much, much easier for all of us. I'm open to questions, and I hope that this was intriguing or interesting. And those of you who are interested and would like to be members and partners on this initiative, please let me know, and we'll try to assist you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Milos. As expected, we have a large number of people in the audience. So anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand when we can unmute you, or you can type in your questions in the Q&A box in Zoom, and we can answer. While you get ready and start typing your questions or raise your hands, Milos, I have a quick question about these technologies. What is the expected cost for an item of clothing that has these kind of technologies embedded in it?
I mean, the first generations will definitely be not be particularly cheap, but the intent is to bring it to the level that it's not more than 2 times the cost of the normal, 2 or 3 times the cost of the normal garment. Give you an example. If you want to buy those socks from Sensoria, the pair of socks is about $100, $120. That gives you order of magnitude, because right now they're not selling them in large volume. If they go into large volume and they have to make 100 unit, million units, the price will come down dramatically.
Great, thanks. There are a few questions already being typed in. So maybe I'll read them and you can answer. I'll read them because I want them to be recorded for the video posting. First question is from Dr. Abra Mansfield, and she says, thanks, Milos. You talked about benefits of textile-based wearables in terms of compliance with wearing the device. Can you also speak to the feasibility cost of having an entire wardrobe with these garments, or is it that necessary?
It is. Thank you, Avril. That's a very good question. No, it's not necessary. We are really targeting, at this stage of the game, underwear, socks, leggings, bras, and undershirts as one of the vehicles to deliver most of these solutions. We may need to go beyond that, but these are the main targets right now.
The second question is from Dr. Bakoslav Lasovsky, and he says, for wearable robots like exoskeletons, textiles seem like an applicable option for sensing for control. However, what are your thoughts on actuation? Do you think the material science is developed enough to generate sufficient torque and power, example, assisting post-stroke persons with upper limb activities of daily living?
That's a good question. So if you're looking at actuation through producing force and torque in a joint using textile solutions, and do it as an exoskeleton, that what robotics field has been trying to do, Brock, that we don't have the technology which is sufficiently mature to generate torques that we need for that. For example, the hip torque would typically be about 18 Newton meters. There's no way that any of those technologies can do it presently. However, you can create the socks which can generate contractions along the length of the sock or leggings, and they can be used to act as a venous pump. That technology is kind of viable. There's need for development in that space. However, if you want to do locomotion with patients, or you want to do upper limb, you can use electrical stimulation, and that's what we've been focusing on and that's what I spent the last 6-7 years building this technology. You can very nicely electrically stimulate the muscles, and you can get all the movements out of the hand or the legs that are appropriate for locomotion or reaching and grasping. We are not there yet completely, but we're very, very close. We have 2 electrode candidates at least that we think can go into the garments and deliver this technology. And if this turns to be correct, as we're doing the experiments as we speak right now with human subjects, if this turns out to be correct, then that will be an elegant avenue to generate locomotion in people all standing up and transfers in people who are fully paralyzed using that type of actuation rather than mechanical.
Thank you. There's one more question in the Q&A box, but I think we still have more time. If there are other people in the audience who have more questions, please type in your questions or raise your hand and you can ask. This next question is from Dr. Nancy Salbach, and she says, what is a typical type of material used for this type of clothing? How soft or comfortable is it?
Oh, this is excellent question. You know, normally what is done is there are all kind of different considerations, and I'm not a textile guru, don't pretend to be. And so there are considerations of following nature. Does this have to be tied to the body? Does the person, as they're sweating, does the sweat has to be eliminated and through kind of a gradient vector taken outside of the textile and evaporated? So taking all this into consideration, then you decide and which part of the textile has to be stretchable, which part has to be kind of firm. Based on those needs and requirements, one will come and choose which textile and which fiber and how this fiber should be knitted or created, and then these fibers and parts are then stitched together in order to get this combination of different textile properties along the trajectory of the whole garment. So this is an art and what you call it, a challenge on its own. But many of those garments are actually what should I call it? The artificial materials. But sometimes, as I said earlier, you can functionalize cotton or you can functionalize wool because they have some other properties which are relevant.
You mentioned that there
polyester, for example. Sorry.
You mentioned a few large-scale grant applications that are submitted. Do you know when we will hear back from those and hopefully with positive news?
So NFRF, we should know about it by February, March 2023. So it's in 4 or 5 months from now. And CFI, that's probably next June, July, maybe even later.
Fingers crossed.
We hope so. We'll see what happens. We really put a lot of energy and effort into that. And so we'll see how it goes. Okay.
Are there more questions from the audience for Dr. Popovic? Oh, let's see one. This one is from Alex Carabano, and he says, thanks, Milos. Excellent presentation and great work by the KITE team. Other than sessions like this one, how do you think you will get the word out to the research community that will ensure, I guess, wearable garments will be ready for incorporation into human research projects at UH and elsewhere?
So right now we're building some of this technology, right? And I'm one of those people who doesn't like to talk about too much before we know that the technology is fully viable. We are informing people through this and other conference opportunities and communication and conferences or information sharing opportunities, telling people what kind of capabilities we're trying to develop, who are our partners and whatnot. And so we have been using this to attract all those partners Alex, as you've seen them on the presentation. But as some of the technologies become viable, in a sense that they can become products, then there will be a couple of different initiatives. First initiative will be to find a commercial partner who would take this to the market, because we are not that entity. Hopefully there will be enough, there'll be at least one commercial entity who would like to take it forward to the product level. If not, we may be forced to create a startup ourselves. And when that type of situation occurs, then we will start going with that company and the proper partners at commercialization in UHN to advertise the technology. And of course, there are going to be papers published, there are going to be patents, and whatnot. So depending what is the level of readiness, if the technology is ready for clinical trials and testing, we will start doing that and publishing about that. And then when it becomes mature sufficient that it can be considered as a product, then we will go to much broader public and find venues to present this and get people buying into it. Launching a product is always a complicated story, and it's a very much product and business model dependent. But this is in front of our mind. That has to be done right, and it will be product or technology dependent.
Thank you. There's another question from Dr. Atena Roshan-Fikr, and she says, thanks, Milos, for the great presentation. Do you think if we can have all prototypes and devices in FIBRE to be eventually connected to a single global platform for data sharing and algorithm development across FIBRE researchers, similar to our PATH program, but targeting only textile wearables?
To be absolutely frank, we have been trying to leverage the PATH project as a way to connect all the textile technologies that we'll be building. So we are right now working with a team at Centennial, which is trying to put together data acquisition system, battery, and wireless communication system. That one of the primary desires is that it's compatible with our PATH that is developed at KITE. For those of you who are not familiar what PATH is, it's a system that's installed at home and can take any communication protocol to pull the data out of your wearable technology and put it in the system, put it in the cloud, timestamp it, and combine different wearables in the same data set, okay, while protecting patients' privacy and yada, yada, yada. So that technology is very attractive for us, and since it's developed in-house, we will try to leverage it for FIBRE project to the best of our ability. But there'll be other external forces that may force us to adopt something else or another approach. But this is where we're going. This is what is the initial intent.
Thank you. If there are any other questions, please type them now. Otherwise, we're coming close to the end of our allotted time, and we can wrap up the session. Okay, I guess there's no other questions, and it's almost 1 o'clock. So thank you again, Milos. Wonderful presentation, and thank you so much. Everyone in the audience, please join me in a final round of applause to thank our speaker.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Baba.